So not too long ago, I attended the MCM Comic Con in London.
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
The best place for all your ludicrously overpriced merch, surrounded by a group of degenerates whose closest interaction with a shower had been when their ceiling sprung a leak. But it's also the best place to hang out and chat with fellow nerds such as myself. And of course I went to Comic Con dressed as my usual Ash Ketchum outfit. Yes, I'm that cool. Being dressed as someone from Pokemon naturally gears you towards other Pokemon fans, and so the common discussions begin to take place. Was Charmander the best Gen 1 starter Pokemon? Are Gold and Silver the best Game Boy games? And would you rather do Officer Jenny over Nurse Joy? The answer to all of these questions is of course
yes.
But then there was a question that did not have such a unanimous answer, and that was, did the first Pokemon movie actually suck? Now don't get me wrong, as a kid I friggin' loved this film. I mean, it was the goddamn Pokemon movie. But I did remember leaving the cinema with a bit of a grudge, and not liking it as much as I should have, not even caring to watch it again for many years after. But I can't quite remember why that was the case. The hype around this film back in the day was insane. Everyone was playing the games, everyone was watching the shows, and the trading cards pretty much had a black market cult to them. And now we were getting the film that was going to star both Mew and Mewtwo, two mysterious yet powerful Pokemon which had been teased in the TV show. And the fact that you needed to put in a cheat code or glitch the fuck out of your game to even get Mew on the Game Boy made it all the more mysterious and desirable. The film was also further hyped by the marketing campaign. Trailers, posters, and behind the scenes sneak peeks were everywhere. Burger King did these awesome gold-plated Pokemon cards that would come in a protective Pokemon ball. And when going to see the film in cinemas, you'd even get this awesome looking ancient Mew card. Yeah, this was going to be one hell of a watch. The epic battle between Mew and Mewtwo. So we get into the cinema and we're ready to jump into this bad boy and what the hell is this shit? Yeah, so before the main film even begins, we were given this separate segment at the beginning titled Pikachu's Vacation. This short film has nothing to do with the main film, and I imagine it was only included to make up for the unusually short 75-minute runtime of the main film. But honestly, the short is okay in on itself. Ash's Pokemon meet a group of rival Pokemon, they have some competitions between each other, before finally deciding to work together to free a stuck Charizard. Though I'm pretty sure Onix alone could have easily freed him all by himself, but hey, teamwork makes the dream work, right? Because there's no dialogue from the Pokemon trainers, much of the humour comes from visual gags, which is always nice. Though speaking of visuals, there are these weird cut shots between scenes of random Pokemon. Some are cute, and others are just weird. What the hell were they smoking? As a kid, I didn't mind seeing this short film. It was more Pokemon content after all. Plus, we also got a sneak peek at two of the next gen Pokemon, so that was pretty neat. But now that that's all done, onwards to the main film. Oh boy. And man, you know you're cocky with your franchise when you're already calling it the first Pokemon movie. Nah, in fairness, by the time the English dub was getting released, Japan had already made the second movie. So they knew another one was coming.
There will be more Pokemon movies. We're hopeful that next year we'll be introducing yet a second movie, and after that a third one. So there will be many more movies in the Pokemon franchise.
It opens with a group of scientists who have successfully cloned what they deem to be the most powerful Pokemon in the world, Mewtwo, cloned from the legendary Pokemon, Mew. Upon awakening, Mewtwo questions what the purpose of his creation was. And after hearing that he was nothing more than an experiment, he lashes out, destroying both the lab and the scientists.
We dreamed of creating the world's strongest Pokemon, and we succeeded.
Jesus, this got dark fast. We've gone from the fun and light-hearted Pikachu's Vacation to the mass murder of scientists from a tortured soul. And that's not even with the darker deleted scene that was in the original Japanese version. But I'll be talking more about that later. Giovanni, the leader of the criminal organisation Team Rocket, sees Mewtwo's power and offers to team up with him, promising Mewtwo that he'll help him control his powers. But after Mewtwo learns that Giovanni sees him as nothing more than a servant, Mewtwo once again lashes out and escapes. which was actually a scene we saw back in the TV series. Apparently certain episodes from the anime were intended to tie in with the events in the film, and would act as a kind of prequel to the main film.
What Pokemon is that?
Pokemon unknown. No available data.
No data?
Though due to the controversy going on with the Porygon episode causing seizures amongst some audiences, this ended up delaying the tie-in episodes. Though an interesting idea, I do think it's better just to have the film as its own standalone product, and not be reliant on external episodes to fill in any plot gaps, as you're just going to end up alienating some of the audience. I suppose we did get a bit of a tie-in episode for when Gary ended up battling Mewtwo in the TV series, but you didn't need to see that in order to understand what was going on in the film. Mewtwo heads back to his original island, declaring war on both humanity and Pokemon.
I will find my own purpose and purge this planet of all who oppose me. The reign of Mewtwo will soon begin.
Huh, bit of a character shift. He goes from wanting to find his purpose in life to suddenly wanting to purge the world of everyone in it. Man, Mewtwo had a bigger shift in character than Daenerys in Game of Thrones. You know what? Fuck those bells. Now it's worth noting that in the Japanese dub, Mewtwo's character is handled completely different. But again, I'll talk about the differences between the US and Japanese dub later on in the video. We then cut to our main trio, Ash, Brock and Misty, where Ash is getting into a Pokemon battle with a random trainer.
That's right, I am too weak to work, but a Pokemon battle isn't work.
That's progress. At least his mouth is working.
I must admit, I do love this opening scene. It has a pretty sick cover of the standard Pokemon theme song, and we get to see how the animation has been stepped up from the TV series. And hold the fuck up, that's not one of the original Pokemon. Yeah, seeing the first hints of the next generation of Pokemon was a pretty big deal back then. I remember me and my best friend at the time absolutely creaming our pants when we first saw this.
Oh, that's nasty! Not literally.
Though this fight is awesome, my one gripe with it is that despite Golem here being a rock type, Pikachu somehow manages to electrocute him.
Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder.
Seeing his remarkable performance, Ash is then invited by a Dragonite to a Pokemon tournament where only the greatest Pokemon trainers are allowed. Oh, and fun fact, the crew joked at how Dragonite's handbag might actually create a fashion trend amongst men. I mean, steady on guys, carrying a handbag around is what got Tinky Winky banned in some countries. No, seriously.
Is there a rewind button?
Oh, Brock, you borderline sexual predator, you.
It's a girl? Oh yeah, you're right about that.
She can violate my rights.
The gang arrive at the port where they hope to set off for the island. I love how this is meant to be an invite for the greatest trainers in the world, and this guy's just brought along his friggin' Caterpie. Respect. Unfortunately, due to a bad storm, no boats are sailing from the harbour, and it's been told that the Pokemon Center is closed due to missing a Nurse Joy.
She sure looks familiar.
Yep, I mean all the Nurse Joys look practically identical. Not to miss out on the tournament, some of the trainers decide to brace the storm and set out on their Pokemon to the island, with our trio taking a boat from Team Rocket disguised as Vikings.
I didn't know Vikings still existed.
They mostly live in Minnesota.
Not being from America, I had to look up what this line meant, and it turns out to be a little joke at the Minnesota Vikings football team. Perhaps I'll alter my own version, tailored for a British audience.
I didn't know Vikings still existed.
Yeah, shut the fuck up, Brock, you daft twat, or I'll shank your mum, innit, bruv?
And despite the boat getting capsized, the trio managed to make it to the island, with the few other Pokemon trainers that also managed to weather the storm.
There's only 3 of them.
Only the trainers capable of braving the storm have proven themselves worthy in my master's eyes.
Which means I'm guessing this random trainer on the Fearow must have died. F in the chat for Fearow, dude. Lived a life without fear. Bro. Though I'm telling you, it's a good thing this guy with the Caterpie didn't also make it to the island, otherwise he would have obliterated Mewtwo's ass, and this film would have been over.
I decided to fly over. It was easy. Hurricane winds are a breeze for Pidgeotto here.
Actually that's a Pidgeot, not a Pidgeotto.
Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder.
The trainers are then shown that the person behind all this is Mewtwo, to which one of the other trainers is outraged that a Pokemon can't also be a Pokemon trainer. And it's revealed that Mewtwo's assistant is actually the missing Nurse Joy, to absolutely no one's surprise whatsoever.
Where am I? And how in the world did I get here?
Probably not the first woman to say that in Brock's presence. Meanwhile, Team Rocket sneak into the island via a side entrance, and discover a lab which is creating clones of Pokemon. Mewtwo then summons these clones, claiming them to be superior to the original Pokemon, and so pits his clone Pokemon against the trainer's original. Oh boy, now we get to see Charizard in action, arguably Ash's most powerful Pokemon, and my personal favourite. This is gonna be amazing, just like how he epically defeated Magmar in the TV series. Let's fucking go, Charizard! Oh. Yeah, so the clones make pretty short work of the originals, and though it was disappointing to see Charizard get his ass kicked, I'm not gonna lie, when rewatching this film, that fight scene still gives me goosebumps.
Alright, go!
After the originals have been defeated, Mewtwo now starts capturing them along with the other Pokemon, where they are taken to the lab to be made into more clones.
Sandshrew?
That is a Sandslash, not a Sandshrew.
Alakazam!
And that's a Scyther, not even remotely close to an Alakazam. Did the English dub crew even watch the show? Apparently 4Kids did respond to the errors, and said they decided to leave them in when they noticed it, as 1, it was something for the kids to point out, and 2, it would be in character for Team Rocket to get the Pokemon names wrong. I don't know, that just sounds like a we couldn't be asked to change it kind of excuse.
Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder.
Pikachu also gets captured, but Ash manages to grab one of Mewtwo's balls, that sounds a bit weird, and in turn causes the Pokemon clone machine to break. The clones are hatched and make their way to Mewtwo, but Ash and the originals aren't too far behind. Yeah, I know it's a kids show with some pretty cheesy moments, but my god, this scene really takes the mantle. But man, this moment must have really given Ash main character syndrome, as despite witnessing Mewtwo withstand a flamethrower and even a hyper beam attack, Ash now thinks he can defeat Mewtwo with a single punch. Just as Mewtwo is about to end Ash, Ash does manage to get some main character plot armor, as he is saved by the legendary Pokemon, Mew. I actually really like Mew's personality in this. His happy-go-lucky and almost childlike persona conflicts perfectly with the serious and quick-to-anger tone of Mewtwo. Determined to prove he is stronger, Mewtwo challenges Mew to a fight, along with his clone army against the originals.
Mew says you don't prove anything by showing off a lot of special powers, and that a Pokemon's real strength comes from the heart.
Yeah, because it really seemed to be that way earlier. So a battle commences against the clones, and we get what is probably the most controversial part of the whole film.
This just proves that fighting is wrong.
Yeah, so the franchise, which is basically just glorified cockfighting, is now trying to preach to us about how fighting is wrong. This would be like if Thomas the Tank Engine tried to preach to us about the use of fossil fuels. It's a good message in on itself, but it's in the wrong film.
Pokemon aren't meant to fight. Not like this.
What are you talking about? This is exactly how Pokemon fight. They even have moves such as Bite, Tackle and Scratch. Hell, they fire fucking laser beams at one another. And in the wild, according to various Pokedex entries, they even prey on one another. You absolute twat munchers. Now this is where I'm going to talk about the Japanese version compared to the US version. The original Japanese dub of the film has a much bigger focus on existentialism and what it means to be a clone. So when the originals and clones are fighting, it's less so that fighting itself is bad, but more so the reason as to why they're fighting. Now unfortunately, the Pokemon movie I purchased on Amazon only came with the English dub, but if you have Netflix, there is the CG remake of the Pokemon movie, where you can watch it with the original Japanese dub. Or you can just watch it via other methods, but you didn't hear that from me. So to show some of the comparison, check out the dialogue changes between the two versions.
Pokemon aren't meant to fight. Not like this.
この戦い、本物だって、コピーだって、今は生きてる。
Why can't Mewtwo understand it's not right to force Pokemon to battle this way?
This just proves that fighting is wrong.
この世に生きている生き物。
勝ち負けがあるわけ?
I'd rather risk my life out in Mewtwo's storm than watch these Pokemon destroy each other.
生き物は同じ種類の生き物に自分の縄張りを渡そうとはしません。
The US dub also really botched Mewtwo's character. In the original Japanese dub, Mewtwo's character is much more around his existential crisis of being a clone and just wanting to fit in with the world. He's not really portrayed as a villain and falls into a much more grey area of morals, especially when we see the cut opening segment of Mewtwo's backstory. In this, Mewtwo meets a clone of the scientist's daughter named Amber. Amber tells Mewtwo it doesn't matter who you are or what you are, be it human or Pokemon, all that matters is that you're alive. Then the short tragically ends with Amber and the other starter Pokemon fading away and dying. This segment was cut from the Western release because they believed that having this existential theme would be too dark and difficult for kids to handle. I mean, yeah, could you imagine if they made a kids film today revolving around existentialism and death? What a terrible movie that would be. Now this origin story did eventually get released with an English dub, but only as a bonus section in the spin-off film Mewtwo Returns. Better late than never, I guess, but it really was a disappointing loss from the original film. The reason the US dub changed Mewtwo's lines to make him more villainous was so that the movie had a clear evil character to pit against, or in other words, simplify it to be more black and white. Again, here's a couple clips of dialogue for you to compare.
The human sacrificed himself to save the Pokemon.
確かに。お前も私ももう存在しているポケモン同士だ。
Humans may have created me, but they will never enslave me. This cannot be my destiny.
私の価値だ。私は誰だ。私は何のために生きている。
The world will heed my warning. The reign of Mewtwo.
だからこれは攻撃でも宣戦布告でもない。
I am the new ruler of this world, the master of humans and Pokemon alike.
人間のように弱くてひどい生き物が支配していたら、この星はダメになる。
Humans, you have served my purpose. I am sparing your lives for the moment.
人間たち、命までは取ろうとは言わない。とっとと帰るがいい。
This change of character is something that the producers would later admit they regret doing, but you know, damage is already done, guys. Another change was in the musical score, most notably that the US soundtrack would add music or dialogue to scenes that were originally silent. This is actually something I also noticed with Dragon Ball Z, where the US dub would add in music and even extra voice lines from where the original was silent.
My, what do we have here? A fallen prince. Oh dear.
Now, this may be controversial of me, but I think I actually do prefer the US soundtrack over the original. But maybe that's coming from a pure nostalgia perspective, as I even have a soft spot for the corny as fuck "Brother, my brother" vocal track. Seeing the devastation from the fighting, Ash begins running back to try and stop the madness.
Quit it! Please stop!
I don't know why, but this moment always made me laugh. Eventually Ash makes it into the battlefield, and in a desperate attempt to stop the fighting, stands between Mew and Mewtwo, but in doing so gets caught between their blasts. Now, this is the moment in the film where everyone talks about how they cried when viewing it, Ash getting turned into stone, whilst Pikachu desperately tries to revive him, with all the other Pokemon crying around them. And I've gotta say, I didn't really feel it. And that's not me trying to sound impressive or anything.
Ooh, you're hard.
Don't get me wrong, I felt sad watching it, and I've cried plenty of times during animated films. The death of Bambi's mum, I bawled at the death of Dinobot in Beast Wars, and the death of Littlefoot's mum, I still struggle to watch to this day. But this just didn't do it for me. And I think the main reason for that is because I knew this was a fake out. They weren't actually going to kill off the main protagonist of their franchise just like that. Not to mention that I think the whole bringing him back through the tears of Pokemon is just plain stupid. As far as I'm aware, this was never foreshadowed in the TV series, and in the US release of the film, it is only mentioned in one brief line of dialogue.
In their sorrow, the water of their tears somehow restored the lives lost in the storm.
Yeah, it is mentioned a bit more in the Mewtwo's origin story.
My daddy used to tell me a bedtime story that when Pokemon are sad and they cry, their tears are filled with life.
But still, this is just silly. I mean, is this how the Pokemon centers work? That behind the scenes, the Pokemon are just being abused for their tears to be used in medical treatments? Is that how the healing potions work? Every bottle you use was at the cost of 1,000 crying Jigglypuffs? Now I imagine in the original Japanese version, this scene was more to show that both the originals and clones can feel the same way and can cry together. But it still just feels like a lame cop-out. So after witnessing the events, Mewtwo realizes the wrongs of his actions and that human and Pokemon can live together in peace. And we get this line which I'll admit still holds up to this very day.
I see now that the circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are.
And you know, despite the corniness of it all, it is a pretty wholesome ending. Maybe I was a little harsh on this film. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I remember it being back in the day. Maybe it...
What transpired here I will always remember. But perhaps for you, these events are best forgotten.
Oh, now I remember why I didn't like it. Now I remember why I didn't care to watch it again. They actually did it. They pulled the whole, you won't remember anything, so none of this will be canon. All the experiences you had, all the lessons you learned about how fighting was wrong, it means nothing now.
Yes, but theoretically, if someone watched the events of that simulation from start to finish, only to find out that none of it really happened, I mean, you don't think that should be just like a giant middle finger to them?
That's what really ticked me off when I saw this film. Even as a kid, I remember the sheer disappointment upon seeing this.
Hey guys, how did we wind up in this place anyway?
Well, I guess we're just here because we're here.
Brilliant, fantastic, fuck you. Despite all that, rewatching this film, I actually overall enjoyed it. Yeah, it's not without its flaws. Character motors pinball all over the place, the moral seems a bit hypocritical, and the ending does feel like a massive middle finger to the audience, but it's still an enjoyable watch. The runtime is a bit short, but that does also mean we get into the action relatively quickly, and the pacing never really feels too stagnant. I love the fight scenes between the Pokemon, especially with the upped animation quality, and as Pokemon fans, we did finally get to see the legendary Mew and Mewtwo on screen, along with a lot of other cool Pokemon too. And the film was overall a commercial success in both Japan and the West, earning just over $172 million from its $5 million budget, making it the highest grossing anime film of all time in the US. So I would recommend you going back to check it out if you haven't seen it in a while. But I will say, if you want the full experience of the Pokemon movie, try watching it in the original Japanese dub if you can, especially with the uncut Mewtwo origin story, as I feel like it adds more character depth and offers a more mature message than the Western dub did. It may not be the legendary spectacle I wanted to be, but overall, it was still a pretty decent catch.
And don't cry, Mewtwo. You should be happy. You're alive, and life is wonderful.